Okay, let's see if it's working now. Copying the key. Looks like it's working now. I'm going to send you the new link. If you want to send to anyone, that's okay.
Okay. So, okay, this is the
I believe
link. Let's see.
the same key. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Yeah, we are online now.
Yes, we're live. Let's share the link. Yes, we're.
And let's just close this chat. Put this work this way.
Okay.
Send the link to friends of mine. Okay, so we are online now.
Yep.
Yeah. So, well, welcome everyone to my YouTube channel. This is the first live on my channel this year, and with a special guest, Firas. Is that correct?
Yes, it's correct. You nailed it this time.
Thank you. So we are going to talk today about the Glaucus Linux new distribution, which I like it a lot, and I always share information about it. And now we are with the developer, and I believe, as far as I know, the author of Glaucus Linux, correct?
Yep.
Cool.
That's me.
Cool. So could you present yourself for us? Explain your experience in life and everything else.
Okay. Thanks. First of all, I'd like to thank you for like giving me this opportunity to talk about Glaucus on your platform and on your channel. I appreciate that. My name is Firas Khana. I'm a radiologist by profession from Syria, the country in the Middle East. And even though I have a medical background, I'm very interested in open source and in Linux in general. I started using Linux back in 2015, 2014, and I started working on Glaucus in 2018. So it's been 6 years now.
Oh my God.
Hopefully, yes. Hopefully we're still going strong. So
yeah, cool. So that's an honor to receive you here, and I'd like to know where you started to develop Glaucus Linux. For example, what inspired you to develop Glaucus Linux?
um, um, why do people create anything? That's a question. So yes, actually, my journey when I first started using Linux, I immediately jumped to Arch. I was researching different distributions. I was let's try this one. People say it's a good distribution, even though it's not recommended for beginners, and
That's true.
I like to challenge myself. So I started with Arch, and a year or two after using Arch, jumped over to Gentoo and began the rising and the different changing of build flags, trying to build a distribution that suits you more in my free time. And I was obsessed with resource usage with performance, because who doesn't want to save time? Time is a valuable resource. Yep. So I was, how much can I squeeze from my machine so I can save more time? Yeah, if I got the operating system to use the least amount of resources possible for it to work just the way I want it to, so I can focus on doing what I want to do and working on my projects. And so I started tinkering with the system more until I got to a point where Gentoo was not just cutting it for me. So I reached this rock bottom. Like you can't customize what's below there. So I decided to work on something from scratch.
That's cool.
So yes, I had this blog called ./Linux that I wrote on from 2015 to 2017. I used to share articles like how do you configure your kernel? How do you build your initramfs into the kernel? How do you boot without an initramfs? So I had these articles going on, but I remember one of the viewers of the blog or the readers of the blog actually left a comment like, "How long are you, or how minimal do you want this to go? Like, where is this ever going to end? Like, this is the rabbit hole.
Cool.
It just never it goes down and down, and it never stops." So I was like, "That's an interesting question. I think I should stop now." But then, yes, but then I found out Linux from scratch exists.
That's true. It's a good manual for us to configure our
Exactly.
distribution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I start reading LFS, and things only got the rabbit hole just got deeper.
Cool.
Yep. So I was like, let's take Linux from scratch. Let's read it entirely. Let's reread it every time a new release.
Did you read Linux from scratch entirely?
Yep.
My
Like
God.
yes, you have to do that
Mhm.
to understand what's going on. So I was like, hey, this is like totally different from what Gentoo was offering. Like Portage is one thing, and then having to download, extract, configure every package flag by flag, understand what's being provided and whatnot. Like that's they're similar in spirit, but this is just like on a whole new level. Like if you messed up one thing, like there's nothing carrying your hand or helping you, so you're doomed.
Yeah, that's really painful on Gentoo. Because I translated the install manual from Fronttool Linux. Fronttool is from the same creator of Gentoo Linux, and I think it's very painful. Every time you have to update your system, it will download source code, compile and take
Yep.
too long to do this. I don't think it's a very good distribution for use day by day use.
Yes, yes, yeah. Like you have Ubuntu, Exerbo, and these distributions that I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, that are more optimized Gentoo versions. Yes. So I started actually to take the components of Linux from scratch, and I was like, are there any good alternatives they may not be mainstream, but are they suitable alternatives to work with? Like, do they perform as well? Can they be used as replacements, perhaps drop-in replacements for what the mainstream software on Linux from scratch is, or the general software that's being used by Linux distributions? So I started like, we have GCC. Can we try to replace GCC with a different compiler? I started like with Tiny C compiler, Portable C compiler, and with every software component, I tried from the ground up, since I had the freedom of choice. Like I can pick whatever software I can right now. Let's try to build something that works. Initially, TCC, PCC with Muscle. Like I also had Bionic C library, diatlibc, uclibc, and the different options out
Yeah.
there. I had a sanity check. It's somewhat of a virtual sanity check for me. It should be able to at least bootstrap itself or build. I had suckless space at the time, like so it should be able to build suckless space entirely, and then perhaps build a software like let's say LibreSSL or OpenSSL should be able to build that correctly. So I started experimenting. TCC, like it's an amazing project by, I think, Bellard, the creator of QEMU, and the code is just magic. You
Yeah.
don't question code.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is really good, but I wasn't able to get a self-hosting bootstrappable system with it, even though I got a system that boots, but I wasn't able to build on it. So that was a very limiting factor for me. You're developing a distribution. It's not just an executable or a single binary or a library. You want it to build the entire thing, so you kind of have different sanity checks, like it should build this package, these should work fine here, these should work fine here, and it wasn't cutting it for me. So I had to bump it up a bit, and I had to take GCC. I don't think what was that compiler? GBC, I think it was called GBCC, or perhaps Simple C compiler. Like there were many different C compilers, but they didn't just cut it for me. GCC was the even Clang wasn't ready at the time, so Clang GCC was optimizing better than Clang. And for me, I'd like to spend more time, compiling, optimizing software, since it will cut down the time for the user when the executables, the binaries are being used. They will be more optimized. I think that's not the case now, because GCC and Clang are kind of going toe to toe. They're very similar. They're very close, which is a good thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. So I tried to have a proper tool chain at first, build it from the ground up. I ended up with GCC, with Musil. I had elfutils at first, which I then swapped for binutils, and I had a proper tool chain, and then started my way up from there. So we had LFS. I then replaced some components. I then automated LFS using a bunch of shell scripts, and slowly it was becoming something else. It wasn't like a Linux from scratch derivative distribution or something else. Like I started to change the packages, change the flags, change the options, replace this with that, and soon it became something entirely different, a new distribution from scratch. Began as a research project, but now I found out that the community might be interested in it, so I decided to maintain it for it's been 5 years, I think. This
Cool.
is this 6th year, and we're going strong, hopefully.
Yeah. I started a project like yours because I thought, well, I know, I like Alpine Linux because it's a distribution which replaces Bash with BusyBox and Muscle with glibc. Then I was developing a project and I thought, well, why not develop a distribution replace Bash with Toybox? And you saved me a lot of time. That's why I decided to focus on Glaucus Linux instead of develop my own project and take this energy to share with the project and share um, posts and interview. Do this. I believe I'm contributing more with a project which already exists instead of develop my own.
Yes, and I thank you for that.
Yeah.
So in a sense, yes, I get where you're coming from. You know, we always strive to make something, build perhaps a distribution that's more tailored to our needs, especially when we have all these minimal alternatives. Like, why just get them all, compile them into one thing, one distribution, that we can use all and benefit from. There are several projects actually. Glaucus is not the only distribution that's doing that. In fact, I
That's
had
correct.
I had an awesome list, a curated list on GitHub with over, I think, 100 projects, maybe many different distributions. Like, this distribution is trying to replace CoreUtils with VisiBox. This distribution is using Muscle. This distribution is using Toybox. This is using dinit S6. Every distribution has a their gimmick, or the thing that they're pushing forward to, but it still feels like they're not trying or experimenting with all the options out there. So I had to start something from scratch and try to experiment with all these different solutions. And again, I had another sanity check here, which is it should be able to bootstrap itself, should be able to self-host. These for a distribution are very important. having to rely on a different distribution like on Arch or on Gentoo or on Fedora or whatever, like to build your system, like this is always the chicken and the egg problem. You always have something to bootstrap your distro. So I'm glad. I think you featured it on your website as well. Like we finally are able to bootstrap Glaucus on Glaucus. So that was a huge achievement, a huge milestone in 2023. So I was like, for 5 years, I wasn't sure if this thing will work or not, if it's a bootstrap or not. But like I was, oof, that was a huge, achievement. So
By the way,
yes,
sorry.
go on.
Okay, that's the first release which we can put directly from our computer, right?
Yep. Actually, like I think the October 2023 release was the first release that you can actually put on real hardware, even though the ISO is still in read-only format because issues with the initramfs. I'm still working on it, but yes, it boots on real hardware now. Like that's
Oh,
that's
that,
also another achievement.
yeah, that's a good victory for us. But
Yes.
but by the way, are there more people helping you to develop the Glaucus Linux?
We stand on the shoulder of giants. Like we say, a distribution is built from scratch when we're actually relying on projects, on all these amazing developers that have worked on these puzzle pieces. We're just like matching these puzzle pieces to create this nice image. So currently or previously, I used to. It was a one-man project, and
Oh my god.
perhaps only. Yes. Only watched by me, only maintained by me. Um, I am guilty of not writing a proper documentation, so it was like moving very fast, and keeping up the documentation was just like not an option for me. I had the documentation, it got outdated really quickly, so but currently I'm in a place where I should probably have good documentation because like things are starting to get more stable, especially after the it starting. It's we managed to get it to bootstrap, so I should have like something it's stable in that sense. So should have a founding stone for the documentation now. But currently the situation have improved. Like more users are following the project. I think we have like close to 100 members on our Discord server where I'm actually like I try to do like live updates on the development process. Hopefully I'll start to do more, maybe on YouTube or perhaps in this format. Who knows? But yes, I think we're like a team of 3 to 5 members now. 2 members from the Discord server stepped up and started maintaining the website, and the member also started maintaining the wiki, which I'm like very thankful for, because you can't be coming from a medical background, you can't do all these stuff all together perfectly. So you have to sacrifice something. But I'm glad that there are like people with technical backgrounds, like web developers and others that are actually helping now. So yes, I think we're a team of 3 to 5 members now, hopefully expanding in the future. Like I didn't try to publicize the distribution yet or have a proper like marketing or advertising for it, because it wasn't in a ready state, and I don't want to leave bad impressions on it, because trying something that's not working might deter a lot of users. But still, like 5 years, I think is a long time, and we should come out to public. So
That's correct. So you're not a developer, you're a warrior.
I think like a tocadotux tux's lair, like you have a picture with the sword. So yes, we're holding the sword.
Yeah. Got the idea?
Yes, we're warriors.
Cool. Yeah. Well, about the name, I'm always curious about the name. Where did you take the idea of Glaucus? for the distribution?
Yes, actually, there's a funny story behind this. So it's pronounced Glaucus or Glaucus Linux. The name comes from a sea slug or a sea snail called Glaucus atlanticus, which is the scientific name for it, which means like a sea swallow or a sea dragon. It's a sea slug, so it's a small creature. It's a sea creature. Choosing a mascot for a distribution is hard, and even picking a name, like for any project, like it's a hard process. Like we spend more time naming our projects than working on the project itself.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I was actually thinking like Tux is a penguin, like penguins swim, they're in the sea. We have OpenBSD with the puffer fish, like we're all going with these sea themed creatures. So what's a sea creature that's a smaller, hopefully, than both, and that's perhaps a bit more powerful? Like I know slug isn't that powerful, but it's poisonous, so it's a
Yeah.
so yes. And I found this class of sea animals that I really liked, and I decided to go with the Glaucus because it's a powerful sea creature, and we can actually its organization, like its anatomy is interesting. I used to have a naming convention. I still do, but I try to make stuff a bit simpler for um, users and developers who are trying to understand the naming convention. I try not to overcomplicate stuff because that will deter also users. But having a proper naming convention is where I'm currently at. The anatomy of the animal actually inspired some parts of the distribution. You can say that the package like or tree or ports like tree that I'm using resembles the serrata or the extensions of the animal. The animal, for example, has a radula or a mouth or a bunch, which has a bunch of teeth that it eats poison, and then it produces a more concentrated poison called venom. So the process of this is called envenomate, which is actually the process we're using for creating software, building software from source. Is also called envenomate. I try to keep it fun, not overcomplicate stuff, because you can have a bunch of weird names. No one will remember any of them. But having a good balance, like keeping it unique while still keeping it understandable, that's what I'm trying to go with. Hopefully,
Cool. Well, by the way, I have to agree with that. If I was going to continue my project, I had no idea the name I was going to give to it. you know, it's an ungiven name for a project. So because I'm not good at naming things, I prefer to put my hands and work on it instead of naming. I always expect someone to name it, and then I adopt the name. That's much better for me than naming things.
it's an entire art. Like naming is an entire art. Like having the name of the thing and its tools and the flags. Like it can take years.
Yeah, I always
Really, like,
burn my brain to name something. Well, why did you decide to adopt a toy box instead of this box? That's very
yes,
interesting.
yes. So I think that's a unique thing about Glaucus. Not many distributions are using Toybox for the Unix user space. Um, so here's the thing: Glaucus didn't start by using Toybox. Initially, we had Suckless Space and Ubase, Space and
I
Ubase, which
remember.
are both projects from Suckless, and they were good in a sense that they are very minimal. They did what you asked them to do, but again, the sanity task was it should bootstrap itself, and or at least bootstrap itself, then be able to build perhaps LFS or Linux from scratch. So these are two tests that I had as a as sanity tests, and it didn't pass that test. So I was like, even though I'm using more minimal alternatives, but we're going nowhere. Like the distribution can't bootstrap itself. So I want something that's able to bootstrap itself, build packages, like heavy packages like an SSL library, TLS libraries. Um, and at the time, like there were options like you can choose OpenBSD base, FreeBSD base, Heirloom tools, which Copacabana Linux I think is using. And but yes, Toybox was an interesting choice because having read the code, like it is cleaner, it is smaller.
Yeah.
It's made by the same developer who created BusyBox, Rob
Yeah.
Landley, Mr. Rob Landley, and like he's a brilliant man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so they started like working on Toybox, like fixing issues that were with BusyBox, making it more minimal, removing obsolete stuff perhaps, and improving on it. Every commit on Toybox, like you see, stuff are being removed, not added. So that's a very good sign of a healthy project. Like if less is more, like this notion, this analogy, like really means a lot. So as well, like Toybox was also focusing on being able to bootstrap at least LFS, or building a Linux from scratch distribution. It should be able to bootstrap that. I think that was a goal of theirs. Perhaps I'm mistaken on this, but or bootstrap a distribution that they're making, Aboriginal Linux, I think. So I decided I checked BusyBox initially, but I didn't like its organization and its the way the tools are in. I then switched to Toybox, and I was surprised. Like, where has this been? Why isn't anybody using it? Like, it's so powerful. I barely noticed. Like, I have switched bases, and it even like comes with convenience tools like convenience flags. Like, they try to add some flags that ensure perhaps a bit of compatibility with core utils, so you don't break the entirety of the user space and scripts and stuff, which is a good thing because I was finally able to bootstrap the system using Toybox. So that's a win for Toybox in my book. I wasn't able to do that with any other user space, so I guess yay Toybox.
Yeah. True. I've been analyzing each command of Toybox, benchmark then compare them with other sources and other implementations. And something I like a lot on Toybox is that the performance is much better, at
Oh,
least as far as I could see. I could notice that.
yes.
The code is smaller. I could not find so much bugs. Like for example, I analyzed the set command. 6 different or 7 different implementations of the
Yes.
set command. One of them was from the BizBox, and something I noticed on, I'm sorry, BizBox. I noticed from Biz, BizBox, from set BizBox, the command set coming from BizBox, is that the performance is inherited from GNU set.
Yes.
And the GNU set is not a speed command. It doesn't have a good
Yes.
performance. It actually inherited the performance from set. I'm sorry, I'm a little tired today,
No
so
worries, no worries.
yeah, my brain is a little slow
I
because
got your idea, yes.
I spent a lot of times during the night taking care of my cat. Sorry
No
for
worries,
that.
no worries.
Mm.
No worries, no. That's normal life. Like,
Yeah, um, I'm really sorry for that. But well, that's what I could notice. The performance is inherited from the GNU set, and the Mina set and Toybox set
yes,
were the best ones. And I've been analyzing all the Toybox commands, and I like it a lot. The performance bugs and vulnerabilities. It was the much better for me. Things I could notice that there are features we're still missing, you know. But I believe this is a matter of time.
yes.
You know.
There was this project. Um, I think it was called Rust Microutils or UUtils. They were trying to replace core utils, and it's written entirely in Rust. And then I think a team from China went and tried to create a Rust-based Linux from scratch, replacing the entirety of I think in 2019 or 2020. It took them, I think, like UUtils. It took them like I don't know, a couple of years to nail every single command for CoreUtils. I know they had this longest list for as long as I could remember, like every command, and if it was in pending, or if it's done, completed, or if it's still on their to-do list. And they had the CoreUtils sanity tests for checking or for testing, and slowly the number of tests that they were passing was increasing, and the number of failing tests were decreasing. So it's a matter of time. It's like just you said. So hopefully the compatibility improves.
Yeah. By the way, you thought about Rust, and I have to agree with you that, as far as I know, you don't like Rust. You decided to adopt another language. It's called MIN to develop your package
Yes,
manager.
yes, exactly. So initially, like as I said, Glaucus started as an automated Linux from scratch using shell scripts with alternative software. So I had like the longest shell script ever. Like it was a single shell script that was over 2,000 lines of code. And here's the thing with shell script: once you're over 1,000 lines of code, you're doing something wrong. You have to go with a proper programming language. So I was like, I think this is the final nail in the coffin. I should pick something up. So what's in my arsenal of programming languages? Like I knew a bit of Python. I had a bit of C, C++ knowledge, but I wanted to try something new, something modern. I was like, hey, like we have Rust now, we have Go now, we have a different Crystal, a bunch of different a bunch of different languages, and I wanted to experiment with all of them. I started by learning Go, so I think I spent like 2 to 3 months learning Go, and then my friend was like, "Hey, did you know that Discord switched from Go to Rust?" I was like, "Well, of course they have their reasons. Like it's not there's always different problems, need different tools, and perhaps they faced a problem where Rust was the better choice." So I looked at Rust and I was like, there is no way, like as a doctor, as a person coming from medicine, who's going to understand all these, all this verbose syntax. I was like, oh, what's this symbol here? What's that symbol here? What's a lifetime? What's an RC? What's all that? Like that's so complicated. Like. That's what I thought initially, but I was like, after 3 months of learning Go, I decided to write the first implementation of the package manager in Rust. I hope you heard that correctly. So yes, you can go to the package manager repo on GitHub. You can check the branches. I've literally spent a year and like 2 or 3 months rewriting the entire thing in Rust.
My God.
Yes. So going from like not knowing anything about the language, like I threw myself in there. I was like, how hard could it be? At first, like I was fighting the borrow checker. Cargo was driving me nuts. Like I took the longest time to implement the stupidest of things, but then you have to .clone yourself everywhere until you get a feature. But then like things like started working. I suddenly it clicked. Like I started like understanding it. I started adding more features, but every time I wanted to add something, I had to do this huge like research on it. How would I implement it? How would I? It started getting harder and harder for me. Like the amount of time spent compared to using something simpler was just, or for adding a new feature was just like insane. Like I could probably implement it in Python in an easier language in a week or two. A new feature, perhaps it would take me 2 or 3 months in Rust. Like I just don't have that much free time, so I decided to not work on the, or perhaps pause the development of the Rust version. It's still on GitHub for those who want to like improve on it. I decided to pick something like simpler that's also compiled, easy to read, easy to write in. And here's the fun thing, like the Rust version with the muscle libc, like I think they had issues with shared linking at first, so they were statically linking, and at the time, like I had all static libraries removed. I, I was only supporting shared linking, so for a couple of reasons, it didn't. It struck me when I like tried to target. I had Glaucus running in a QEMU, and I built the package manager that was written in Rust, and it just didn't work. I was like running it on my host system. I tried it in QEMU, you know, in Glaucus, and because not all crates actually support muscle libc, and not all crates support cross-compiling. So that was another issue I faced. I was like, if it's just going that way, I'm better off with using something that has C as its backend. And like I had VLang and probably NIM are the only two languages that I know of that currently that have C as their backends, and VLang, like you know, the drama behind VLang. I won't get into it. And just left NIM. So NIM was easy to write, easy to read. It took me 2 months to rewrite my 1 year work of Rust in NIM. You know, I think it's because like this is a rewrite. I've already like gone through all the problems. It's not because like NIM or Rust, like it's not dependent on the languages. It's more of a me issue than a language issue. But then I started adding new features, and I was surprised. Like I can do that. Like almost, I can think of something and implement it almost instantly. Like that was like a huge plus for me. Um, it abstracts a bit more, but it's as fast as C. It compiles to it's a meta programming. You know, it transpiles to C, which then gets compiled by my customized toolchain, which is another plus. Like I didn't have to worry about adding a Clang or CLang, sorry, or LLVM or all this. I had this optimized GCC muscle binutils toolchain with a custom set of flags of that I was working on, and it just like I um, I actually directed the NIMS compiler to use that toolchain that I made, and boom, it created the executable of the package manager, which was like 10th the size of what Rust is using. I then threw it in QEMU, and it ran just fine. So I was like, this is interesting. I no longer have to add GCC and LLVM to my. I have two compilers at least for the bootstrapping the core system. So that's a huge win in my book. The size was smaller. You know, Rust is an amazing language, but it sometimes tends to overcomplicate stuff. Like a simple hello world program, like run a simple LDD on it and check what libraries it links to. Like, why do I need libgcc for hello
That's
world?
ridiculous.
Why do I need a 3 megabyte? Go is not. No, I'm just saying hello world. Like even Zig gets this correctly, but I was like, yes, like this is a very powerful language, but I want something simpler. So I went with NIM, and I'm glad I went with NIM because like it's funny saying that it's simpler than Python. Like
Oh my
you
god.
need to try it to appreciate it. So yes,
Yeah, cool.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, of course. You answered my question in, with a lot of mistakes. No, not exactly mistakes, but uh, mysterious I was having about Rust language, because I'm a system administrator, and of course
Yes,
I don't mess with code, but I have some binaries, Rust binaries in my machine, and I think it's simply ridiculous. Exactly the size of the binary. I don't have so much tools inside that binary to have a so big binary. You know, that's why I
yes,
didn't like Rust. Because, for example, I have the Rust core utils. I don't have enough commands inside that binary. So why is that
yes.
so big? You know?
Yes, yes, precisely. Like I was like, where's all this coming from? Like the only excuse I had was like, hey, this is not a Rust system. Like you have to, it's a C-based operating system. Like the C libraries are already installed on here, so C applications won't take that much size. But Rust, it's not. We have to. I was like, okay, but hello world, libgcc, like what's going on?
Yeah, and
Yes,
other
I know you. Like, yes. Sorry, go on, go on.
I'm sorry. No,
Yes.
go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So I was like, yes, I know you can tell cargo to ignore like adding certain stuff to get rid of it, but it shouldn't be that way. Like,
Yeah, something I saw. Oh well, it's dynamically linked. It's not statically linked. There's no
yes,
excuse to
yes,
be so big.
yes. That's another issue. Like,
Yeah,
why?
yeah. And people are saying, "Oh, I can use Rust to develop an embedded system." That's not true. I cannot see
Yes.
people using Rust to develop an embedded system. Mm.
Well, yes. Like yes, you can say that. Yes, like it's hard. Like it's really hard. Like it's not that simple. Also, the long compile times were a huge issue. Like you should respect developers' time. I know like you're saving them a bunch of time in after releasing the application, the memory safety, like it's a huge bonus, it's a huge plus. But the developer experience, like you should improve that. Like I mean, Go compiles insanely fast. Nim's compilation speed is also not that bad. It's good. Um, but like Rust, like you have 200 crates on a project, it'll just pull them and rebuild them, even with the SCC cache and all these, stuff that look at your cache instead of rebuilding stuff. Even when using them, although they have false positives, which I'll get into later on, because, but yes, the developer experience is very important. So, and the time, like it's all about time. Time is money. Time is important. Um, the features, like just yeah, yes, like, it's a great language, but the developer experience could be much better.
Yeah, and even end users, for example, because I see people writing software in Rust and rewrite it in another language. Because, for example, I try to copy files from one hard disk to another, and the result is the compile time broke, and I could not copy all the
Oh,
files to my other hard disk. So I don't think it's going to work properly. But maybe on certain kind of things, but not on everything.
yes, yes.
Yeah, so I believe that's going to happen. I hope Rust is going to be a good language, but not for everything. And people are
Yes,
try to adopt to everything, and that's not correct.
true. Like a programming language should generate a lot of hype. Like having a lot of hype for something is a good thing. Like it'll invite more developers, more users, and it's always a good thing. But trying to like use the same tool for every problem out there, like it just won't work. Like um, there are use cases where Rust, like yes, it should be rewritten in Rust, like yes, but it's not just it's not for
For
everything.
everything,
So
yeah. And people are trying to do this, like for example, Java.
yes,
In the past, people used to do this, but that's not correct. I hope people notice that and see that we need to have more than one language for the
yes.
things. That's the concept. I hope people do this.
Oh,
Mm.
well, I hope so too. Unfortunately, I think we'll have Glaucus-RS if this goes on very soon.
Uh, by the way, I met Nan with Glaucus because I didn't know the language, and I have to download a book, something like
Oh,
this, to
oh,
study
oh, oh.
Nan. Yeah, and,
Yes,
and yes, I love the syntax of the language. It's
yes,
it's simple for everyone to learn.
yes, yes. Like it's super simple and it just works. I was surprised. Like I wasn't actually expecting that. Like Python already made things like very very easy, but then like nim, it's just something else. Like you have to try to appreciate it. Like that's all I can say. Like what niche does it fit? What that's always the question. Like why is nim developed? It's just developed to make your life easier, better, but you have to try to appreciate it. So
Cool. That's really cool. And let me see. I had another question and I forgot. I'm sorry for that. My mistake. Let me see if I can
no
get.
worries, man.
Yeah. By the way, you adopt the Arch kernel for this release. Why?
Arch kernel for this release? That's an interesting question. So actually, before I decided to pick Arch's kernel, back in the days when I had ./Linux as a blog, I wrote, I think, an 18-part kernel configuration guide explaining like 600 plus options or so. I was obsessed with having the least amount of kernel options required for your system to boot and function correctly. So I used to like do a make menu config, spend months on it, understanding, studying every option, and then like coming up with a final verdict like this option should be enabled on my machine. This should not. Of course, it was limited, but like it worked. I had like somewhat around 623 options that if you removed one, your system will break. If you added one, then depending on the option, like you won't need it on my machine. So maintaining this configuration, along with I decided to go with a certain set of patches. I cherry picked some of Clear's patches. I went with some like Cache OS patches. Before it, like there was Cache OS, the maintainers, like I think there was Sirlakjan's kernel repo had a bunch of patches that they were maintaining. There was also this, O3 optimizations. There were a lot of patches for the kernel. I had them maintained, but every single kernel update they would break, and having 30 plus patches and a configuration that you have to update, like this was a huge amount of work, huge amount of effort added to maintaining over 150 packages and a package manager and the distros. So I was like running out of time. Like I can't properly maintain this anymore. If I can't maintain it properly for my users, like why should I have it? So I decided to look at already existing options, and there was, I think, CacheOS, which is a performance-optimized version of Arch. They're doing a good job at that. Like recent benchmarks, even if they were micro benchmarks, like they're improving on Clear. You know how on for Linux, just Clear kicks beats every distribution out there in performance. Like I was initially like starting to wonder why does Clear provide so much more performance over other distributions? The thing is, I read a rumor somewhere that they were using Intel C compiler or ICC for packages. That was not the case. Like they were also using GCC, but why were their packages, their software, why was it much more performant? Like 10-20%. Turns out they have per package optimizations. So each package, despite the spec files or the recipe files, had a certain set of flags that was enabled and tested. So which is like I think the correct way to have improve the performance of a distro. Like you can't have general flags and expect them to not cause regressions for certain packages. The developer of Serpent OS, Ike, actually wrote an article on this where he explored like these various performance options, especially the microarchitecture one, like x86-64-v2 and -v3, which is like the talk nowadays. Fedora is looking into it, Ubuntu is looking into it. It's not just it's not a magic three words that you type that will magically improve performance. Sure, optimizing for a newer architecture is a better thing, but I'm sorry if I went off topic here, but this is
No, that's
something.
okay. Go ahead.
Yes,
That's very
yes.
interesting.
So yes, so the regressions will happen. Like even though you might notice 1 to 2% improvement in performance in some packages, but at the possibility of 80% or even 100% increased energy draw. So that's something that should be taken into consideration. Other packages regress. Binary size just gets more bloated. The system can't load it into like its L cache. or it'll have like a smaller binary. So that's something that one should also look into. So you should have every package benchmarked in real life scenarios, not in these micro benchmarks, to test whether like these optimizations work or not. So I was actually looking at distributions that do proper research and on their packages and have like improvement proposals. And I think Fedora was leading, like they have different improvement proposals, and then Arch and Alpine, like they discuss these stuff very seriously. But Arch's kernel team, like I love the way they were maintaining stuff. Even like Valve picked their kernel for with some patches for the Steam Deck, and so I thought like they had a really nice kernel configuration, a good kernel maintenance team, even for security issues, like they would act fast. And I was like, this is working. Also, kernel modules are independent of what C library you use. So I can use like Arch's glibc compiled stuff just fine, because the kernel uses its own implementation of a C library called klibc. So I was like, this will work on Muscle, so there's no issue with that. So why not try them and see if they work? Initially, also, when I first started working on Glaucus, many would come and say, like, Arch is a good distro. Why not, use Pacman, use stuff, and try to make Pacman work with S6, or make Pacman work with Muscle, or make Pacman. I was like, I inspected Pacman, and it'll just turn into another Arch-based distribution because. Yes, because you can't strip a package manager from a distro and expect it to be distro agnostic. So that's the case. Like,
Cool. By the way,
yes,
yeah. Let me see. I have another question. Cool. Oh, by the way, I had a doubt now. When I update Glaucus Linux and the Arch
yes.
kernel come from the Glaucus repository or from Arch repository?
Oh, okay. So currently, until we have proper repositories and build machines, I don't think I'll be providing, Arch's binaries for many different reasons for the kernel. But since these are current temporary release images that are like still not, they're still in alpha stage, even pre-alpha stage. It's not final yet. But I tend to use them as a fallback just to ensure like I didn't break stuff for now. But hopefully, when I have a proper repository set up for Glaucus, which I'm working on, um, and proper build machines, I don't think I'll continue providing, using Arch kernel. I'll just default to having to maintain my own, or perhaps Glaucus's custom version of an Arch-like kernel, which will have like Arch's configuration with some of Clear's patches that I deem important, and some of the other patches that I have. For example, like the BIAC patch, the BSD tar patch. There are different patches that you can add for the alternatives that you're using, and then perhaps ship that kernel. So I'm aiming for that, because like using other distros binaries isn't always isn't legally, I think is allowed without disclosing that. So I actually had a talk with Catchy OS's team on Discord, and I got their permission to use their kernel, provided that I disclose that it's Catchy OS's kernel, and it's totally fine, like by me. But the thing is, like, users expect you to provide a kernel that's fine-tuned for your OS. But currently, like, I want something that just works and is good and agreed upon by many that it's good. So I'm using that currently until, like I said, we have a proper repository setup and proper build servers. Until then, like, we can. Hopefully, it'll be soon, but it's not currently a priority because, like, I have a huge amount of tasks on the to-do list. Like graphics stack is way more important. Like we need to see something.
Yeah, cool.
Yes.
But But for me, that's okay if you use a repository to receive your binaries, because
Yes,
in my opinion, you're going to save a lot of time. There's no reason to set another repository to have the same binary there.
yes, yes, exactly. So yes, I think that that's a way to look at it.
You understand. I believe it's
Yes,
coherent
yes,
to do this.
yes,
Yeah. One more package, I believe it's going to be fun. Checksum, you use Blake 3? Something like this?
yes, yes. For
I
the
like
checksum.
it a lot because it's much
Yes,
faster than
um,
SHA-256, something like this.
yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Why did you decide to adopt the Blake 3?
Okay, so as I said initially, like when you're developing a distribution, you have the freedom of choice.
Mhm.
You can, especially if you're like working on a package manager from scratch, a package format from scratch, you have uh, to do proper research um, on every single choice. So it actually makes sense for you, for your users, for performance reasons, for security reasons. um, Using or having a hashing function that was cryptographic or non-cryptographic for files, for packages, actually was on my research list. It took me a lot to decide on what I'll be using. So I had, I think, SHA 512, SHA 512. Um, Initially, because like it's faster on 64-bit machines, and it's like more secure than 256. That's what the rumors were saying. But then they were not quantum safe, I think, or future proof. So they had to work on something better. Um, I did a lot of research on this, and the fastest non-cryptographic hashing algorithms were XX hash, I think 128-bit, XX hash 3 with 128 bits, I think. Um, and Y hash, I think like these two were the fastest, but they were not. They're not cryptographic, so they're good for like checking if the file was downloaded correctly or not. But they're not for security purposes. I decided like we need something that's okay, much faster than SHA, but not insanely fast, and discard a bit of security. Like it has its implementations. These algorithms have their implementations and their uses, but I wanted something like that was yeah, more secure. So I had Blake 3. Blake 2, I think, was also on the list, Blake 3.
Yeah.
And I think SHA 3, perhaps they were working on SHA 3. And I had a bunch of couple distributions, sorry, algorithms, but Blake 3 just one. Like they had a C version for their um, the software that they're using to verify or to hash something. They had a Rust version. They, I think, provided a 256 width also, and or they had like multiple different width, and it was the correct choice at sorry, at the time. Um, and like some users ask me why not stay with XX hash, or why not use something that's faster, or um, it's not a matter of fast when it comes to these kind of algorithms, because they all, like once you get to a certain limit, like they're all just fast, they're all click, but you want something also that's secure. So collisions for Blake 3, like you can easily get a collision with XX hash, but for Blake 3, like it's almost impossible. So there's the advantage of that. So um,
Simply awesome. Well, I have a lot of questions. For example, why we are shell, why the neat system. I have a lot of questions, but I
yes,
don't
we can we can talk about them all. Like
know.
I have
Oh, that's okay. So, uh, well, Yash, I saw the
yes.
Discord program that people voted on Yash instead of Mir, BSD, Corn Shell,
Um,
or Z
yes,
Shell.
yes,
That's okay.
yes,
And I love Yosh. That
yes.
was one of my choices when I was developing my project because I love it.
Exactly. No,
Yeah.
exactly. No, you know, you love it when you've used it. Like you have to use these alternatives to know them, to
Yeah.
appreciate them, love them. So, uh,
Yeah. I tried to compile that, but my binary was too big. I know what Fedora does because the Fedora binary is much smaller. I don't know, so that's why I decided to give up and take a time to study how it works. But you know, I love Z shell, but there are options
yes.
inside Yash, which I believe is much better. You know?
In my opinion, yes. Like, you know, there was a time where Bash was just like the default on everything. Like you had Bash, 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 Bash. Then Ubuntu, Debian decided, sorry, Ubuntu, I think they used Dash for the command shell, the Debian Amquist shell, which in my opinion, like, it is a fast shell. It is a small shell. It is not user convenient by any means. Like there is no command line history support. There's no command line completion support. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So it's just not usable by users. Like you can have it to run scripts and expect them to be fast, but you'd have like Bash and Dash. So that's two shells on your system. And I was like, that's not just cutting it for me. Um, for conveniency of use and people who are going to fish, like fish was just the option. Like, hey, it has completions that are based on what you typed the last command. It has a lot of stuff that I liked fish at first,
I do.
but then like it was just it's not Bash. It doesn't replace Bash. I still have to have Bash and Dash. So I had fish for interactive use, Bash for the general stuff, the scripts that should run, and then Dash for the
My
accelerated
God.
POSIX scripts. So
Yeah.
that was three shells. I was like, don't we have something better? Like I looked at Toybox, I was like, Toy SH is still under development.
Yeah, that's not
So,
working.
and I'm expecting, yes, so I'm still expecting a lot from it, but it's not in a working state right now
Yeah.
to be used as a distribution shell. So I found Yash. You know, I had a bunch of shells like MKSH, OpenBSD KSH, Corn Shell, LOKSH. I examined all of these options. Like Corn Shell, sorry, is good, but it doesn't support line wrapping. Like that's I think in my opinion, like in Vim or sorry in Emacs mode, it's an important feature to have because the command line for long commands would just go on and on and on, and it was like I think from 1999 or perhaps a different version that's just being updated or being improved. MKSH also, like being a KSH, had the same issue. Also OKSH and all the different KSH versions that I tried. So I decided like we needed something a bit newer, like a bit more friendlier, a bit.
That's
And
important.
I found yes, I found Yash. I was like, hey, there were a bunch of POSIX strict shells out there. I think there was MRSH and a bunch of others, but they were slow, very slow, even though they were strict, and some of them were big. I found Yash. It was awesome. I couldn't believe it when I first tried it. Like it's half the size of Bash. It's like only twice the size of Dash. It's 2 to 3 times faster than Bash. It's only like 1.4, 1.5. And these micro benchmarks, I know, but
Yeah.
I ran a couple of tests on them, and Yash was only a tad bit slower than Dash. Not only that, it had command line completion. It did proper line wrapping. It had a proper history. Like it also had some fish features. Like you wrote a bit of the command, it can complete it for you. Like, and that was out of the box. So I was like, this is a win-win-win situation. Why aren't people using Yash? So I used it like, and another important thing was a bunch for the bootstrap process. Like, will the shell be able to execute all the shell scripts for the different build stuff and build systems available to build successfully? Uh, OKSH, MKSH, like worked for 90% of the packages and failed for the rest. Dash like worked only for like half of them. That's the big sanity test that I have. Like the
Yeah.
bootstrapping is an important
That's
one.
very important.
Yes. So Yash built like all of them. with the exception of only 3 or 4 packages that were easily patchable, but Toybox requires bash. I don't know if you knew this,
Yeah.
and it's for a good purpose. Like since Mr. Rob Landley is trying to replace bash
Yeah.
with Toybox Edge, they're keeping the bash tests and the bash stuff in there. So patching Toybox to not use bash was doable, but it was hard to like justify. So I was like, yes, we should have Yash, and I'm only providing bash in the initial bootstrap process to get to build these packages that have bash. Then in the final system, Yash is the user shell, so it's not available on the final system, just for parts of the bootstrapping process. So I think it has to do with Yash not or perhaps always having it in a POSIX strict mode or POSIXly correct mode. I forgot like the correct term, but it could be worked around that. The thing is, Yash developer, I think Magicant was their nickname. They're working on a Rust version right now. They're Japanese, I think, and it's kind of hard to communicate. So hopefully we can raise that issue and work on it, because like if Yash solves that or has at least a tiny bit of more bash-like compatibility in non-POSIX strict mode, like we can get rid of bash completely, even in the bootstrap process. So
Yeah, that's very important. Yeah, by the way, I fell in love with Yashin. Exactly because of the friendly options, You type
yes,
tab
yes,
and,
exactly.
yeah, and
Out
select
of
the
the
command.
box.
Yeah, pressing tab, it will select the command you are choosing. That's very awesome.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Here's a funny story of mine when I first started using Yash. Um, I had a hard time like getting Control L to clear my screen when I first started like using Yash. I was like, why isn't this the default behavior? It's not clearing, or even the long issue like that they had when you're using Yash, like this is the Yash shell, you're using it, blah blah blah, like this entire block of text that just keeps showing. I was annoyed by these, but I was like, this is so good, I have to continue using it and patch these perhaps, and it worked. Like they're the tiniest patches ever, and Yash is a superb option. It's being rewritten in Rust, which is what we
Yeah,
talked about.
I saw that. I didn't like
Hopefully like it stays good, or
that.
else we're all going to have dash rs appended to every single piece of even to our names, like
Yeah.
Mr. Gabriel dash rs, Firas dash rs.
My
I don't know,
God.
like it's being adopted crazily fast.
I hope it works because I don't know what he's going to do to shrink the binary,
Yes, like
because
I think it's currently at 200 or 300 kilobytes. Like I think with Rust it'll be like 4 to 5 megabytes. Like it's
my
not
God,
just the
uh, that's ridiculous. Well, about init system, you chose 6, right?
Yes, yes, I went with S6. Like this was one of the. Sorry if you have more questions about it, like before I
No,
go
no,
on.
no, that's okay.
Okay, so um, this was one of the few options that I stuck with until the very end. Like I'm not. I'm glad I did, but it was hard. Um, S6 is an impressive init system. Like many are regarding it like as a proper system, the alternative. Um, it tends to be a bit complex. Like you have a lot of S6 stuff to work with. Like how is it a proper, like how is it replacing system D if you have 100 S6 binaries installed with S6 portable utils, Linux in it, or you have to have the entirety of this. But it is an amazing init system, and Scarnet, the developer, is also very friendly. Like they're also very brilliant. Like all these brilliant developers, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, so to say the least. Um, they have domain-specific knowledge in the field of init systems, like which is very rare these days. And S6 was at the time I was using, when I first started the Glaucus, before it was called Glaucus, it was called Snail. Snail was its ancestor. It was a true research project of mine. Like I wasn't planning on, publicizing it or open sourcing it, but it was using sinit, suckless init, and svc. Like I had this script for starting the system and this for shutting it down. I think rc init and rc shutdown, and that was basically it. But it lacked proper service management. You couldn't do proper things on it, so I needed something more powerful. Like I remember having all the options listed. Like we have upstart, we have systemd, we have runit, we have dinit, we have
Woo. We have a
epoch.
lot of
Yes,
systems
these
available.
options. Like which one should we pick? Dinit wasn't available at the time. S6 and S6RC were the options. I went with them. It was a lot of reading. Like S6, to get S6 configured and working properly on a system, that's super complex. The thing that like I was inflammatory about, you could say, was the move from 0.4 to 1, because it broke everything I had with S6 Linux in it. And the way I set it up, even after spending like month of research on this, and there's only a distro or two that were adopting S6 at the time. I think Oberon and Adelie, and Oberon had their Q66 version of it, I think, or 66, sorry. But I decided to go with bare S6 and S6RC, and only Adelie at the time I think had this working, and so slowly adding components, removing components, getting it to work. Using Toybox, that was also important because I didn't want to provide different binaries just for S6 to work in the boot time. I wanted it to use Toybox's binaries to get the system starting. So that was another thing. Like S6 provides like these portable utils and these utilities to get to properly start a system, but you can easily replace them with your existing Unix user space if you wanted to. And again, I'm just surprised by how Toybox fits in perfectly as a replacement for core utils in these places. Like it worked just fine. And I stuck with S6 ever since. Like it's complex, but once you understand it, like it becomes easier for you as a developer. The thing with S6 now, like they're working on S6 front end and on a new init system front end for S6 to make it more like user friendly, which they should definitely do, because having to recompile the database without having the proper software like is a nightmare. Here's why. In the bootstrap process, you are, for example, on a host system that's using glibc, let's say Arch, and you're trying to cross-compile or to bootstrap a muscle-based system. So at a point of time, you have to get S6 -rc -compile working on your glibc host, so you can build the database for your services on Glaucus on that host. I hope this makes sense, because that's something hard to explain. Hopefully I was successful with that. So you have to get the binary S6-RC -compile working on the glibc host to properly compile the services. And then you'd have to use that to build the database so you can use it. But I talked with Scarnet about this, and he said like that you can compile the database wherever and then use it. Doesn't matter if it was like on a glibc host or a muscle host. So I was like, okay, like that works. Another thing that works is having an S6-RC -compile that was statically compiled, so you can use it regardless of the C library that's available. So like that was a hard thing to get right, because you can't have can't run the glibc version inside your muscle-based system, and you can't do the opposite. So like there's that, but I'm glad I stuck with S6. The only alternatives like that I might consider perhaps adding or supporting or trying or experimenting with are, I experimented a bit with Finit like fast init. was also a very impressive init system. Like I think it was written by um, Troglobit was their nickname. Like Finit. The developer was also very friendly. Like they helped me get it to work as a fallback init system for Glaucus when S6 broke. So if you looked at the GitHub releases for Glaucus, you'd find that some versions had finit in them. Like it was because S6 broke. So I was like, we have no init system now. So there you go with finit. People started to think like, hey, did you switch to Fnet? I was like, no, we're still on S6, but S6, it just keeps breaking, and I'm going to pull all my hair by the time I get it working again. So please wait for that.
That's true. I believe it's actually I found difficult to understand six at the first. That's why I
Yes,
gave up to develop something inside my project and adopt something like. For example, I adopted Run It because I think it
yes,
was easier to compile and use
yes.
six to have to take a lot of times and be an advanced user to understand. you know? That's why.
Like run it.
Hmm?
They nailed the aspect of simplicity. Like it's fast, it's simple. Like I agree, it's a very good init system. I just wanted something fresh. Like we already had Void going with Run It, and yes, so S6 was being thrown everywhere. Like we need F6, try F6. And after understanding S6, I was like the hard part is done. Like just it's just working now. Just use it. But
Yeah,
we just need an easier front end. So
yeah. The biggest problem for Run It, in my opinion, is that he stopped the development. I didn't see
yes,
it
yes,
in any new
completed.
release. Yeah, yeah. But the problem for me,
Yes,
yeah, the problem for me for six is exactly we have to take a lot of time to start, to understand, and to compile, to configure. That's a bigger problem for me.
yes.
That's why I say you're a warrior.
Oh, where's the sword? You should
Yeah, the
probably.
sword. You need the sword because we have to consider ourselves warriors. Mm. Well, I have only one more question for you. For example, what we can we expect from the future of Glaucus? For example, we can use now on servers, on embedded systems, something like this. You have a plan for that?
Um, um, that's a very good question. Like I get asked a lot, and I should probably have a proper answer for it this time. So, um, it started as a research project, as an educational project to see how minimal I can get a system to work and boot. And I have achieved that level, with a snail,
Yeah,
Glaucus's
cool.
ancestor. But having, trying to develop a solution for when there is not a problem is something, or sorry, when there isn't any problem going on, is something hard. Initially I started thinking like it's always good like to develop something to add more to the Linux ecosystem, to give back, like combining these alternatives, getting them to work was another thing. But finding a user base for this was hard. You can't, like, you need to have a problem and then design something for it. You can't force a technical solution on something. But then again, like, why do people do anything? So um, I designed this and I said, like, if it picks up a bit of steam, like, I can perhaps continue maintaining it. And it did. Like, people actually, I remember releasing it on Reddit, like, hey guys, I'm working on this, and it had a bunch of different stuff, and they were like, this is cool, like 200 300 upvotes it got, like in a short amount of time. I was like this is really picking up steam, so perhaps I should uh, um, continue working on it. So it was a general purpose operating Linux distribution, intended to be used just like Arch. Like, you can build it as a server, as a desktop, for containers. But then I'm slowly leaning more towards the desktop user experience, and a bit of perhaps have some images for containers. But the desktop user experience is what I'm currently focusing on, which is why I have conveniency and unobtrusiveness like the principles for Glaucus. Like it shouldn't get in the user's way. Coming from a different field, from a medical field, um, having stuff constantly yell at you for having something wrong or not working properly isn't the nicest thing. You expect. Yeah, like there's a fine line between having like the maximum performance but without user conveniency, and having a lot 80 or 90% of it being convenient to users and still having that good performance and it being simple. So you can strike that without having obfuscated code or tools or stuff. So I'm trying to strike that balance. Again, like it's mainly for desktop users. I might consider having a stripped down. It's a stripped down system. Like having Toybox as your user space is smaller, like than some distributions initramfs. So Glaucus is technically smaller than your initramfs. So that's a you can of course use it on servers, but our main target currently is desktop users. Hopefully, trying to push on Wayland, getting it working without having, since we have the luxury of building something from scratch. I'm trying not to get rid of every single X dependency out there, like just getting Wayland working, hopefully with the least amount of dependencies and hassle. So yes, we're currently heading almost there. Like I think I'm a bunch, like 5 to 10 packages away before having a Wayland, perhaps Sway working, and then hopefully I'll add GNOME. GNOME, sorry, the G is silent, or GNOME for GNU. Like we can have that, and maybe Hyperland as well, because these are like the most eye candy options for a distro, and having the base be so simple yet the UI be so intuitive and so elegant, like is a good thing. Like I don't like to provide stuff that's rough around the edges. This doesn't work, this hasn't been tested, the user is going to have trouble adding this, why does this keep showing up, why wasn't it removed already by the maintainers, by the developers. It needs a bit of time, but yes, like desktop users are what we're currently focusing on, and then perhaps servers and containers, sorry, is how I'm envisioning it. Hopefully, like we can perhaps target more in the future, but these are what we're currently working on. Hopefully that answers your question as well.
Of course, that's very important desktop, because of course there are a lot of distributions focused on desktop, but I believe that's important because this is something Linux didn't achieve very well, and
Yes.
yeah, I hope to see more. And if we have more distributions, it means that people are focused on it, and so if more people focus on it, it means that in the future, or maybe not so future, we can see Linux more and more in
We need
desktops.
true.
Uh, yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, sorry, I was saying like true. Like we need to push that forward. Like I think recently Linux's usage jumped over to 4% without actually including Chrome OS and the rest of stuff. Like 4%. Like, can you believe we're at 4% now? Like we've always been like sub 1% or 2%. So getting to 4%, like, is something huge. Like. So we need to push more towards that direction, and hopefully, like every year we say this, but this year will also be the year of the Linux desktop.
Maybe it's not going to happen, but I hope for them. I hope for it, because people say, "Ah, desktop is dying." No, that's not true. Desktop will never die. Maybe we'll change the way we use desktop, but it will never die.
True.
Yeah.
That can be like that. That's very true. Um, Especially since like Toybox is being developed for Android, like getting it working on desktop and providing that luxury to desktop users, compared to something like VisiBooks or something like a more stripped down version, like you have to strike the right balance, and hopefully like um, I'm hopeful that I'm actually achieve that balance, but it needs some time. Like it needs time, patience, and a lot of testing and a lot of pulling your hair out and yelling like, "Why is this not working? I should just quit this thing." But we need to keep moving forward. So
Yeah, that's true. So that's it. I believe we have a good approach on Glaucus Linux. I simply enjoying the distribution. You are making a good work, and
glad
congratulations
you
for
liked it.
that. And well, I believe we already have enough. I took a lot of your time, and I gotta thank you for that.
That was perfectly okay. Like I enjoyed this meeting a lot. Hopefully, we can have a bunch of more meetings in the future.
Cool.
I have to say, like I'm very thankful for the opportunity that you provided. Like even featuring a Glaucus on tocadotux website, like was something I was not expecting. I was like, hey, they're starting to feature us. Like we have 3 articles going on, and I was like very optimistic about it. Hopefully, because getting to work. Like 4 to 5 years on a project without having publicity perhaps or having articles written on it. I think Glaucus only had an article